Everyone. Oh, there we go. Hello, everyone. I am really excited to see so many of you here. Please keep putting in the chat where you're coming from today. Welcome, and thank you for joining on today's webinar on working with the media. I want to thank our colleagues in the Office of External Affairs and staff at Forrest Marsh, our national public relations agency, for collaborating with us on this webinar. As we amp up our volunteer recruitment effort, it is important that the public fully understands who and what AmeriCorps Seniors is and our program's value to communities. One way to do this is working with the media. Media relation plays an extremely important role in creating that understanding, helping us to build awareness of our brand, increase the credibility of our programs, and help to connect with potential volunteers. In today's environment, there are so many news outlets and other sources for telling our program stories, but there's also tremendous competition for space in those outlets. So we have to be prepared to tell a compelling story, and we have compelling stories to tell. I know that we have new grantees, new project directors, and we have more experienced project directors who are all interested in working with the media to tell their local story and recruit volunteers. So I thought this training would be a good foundation from which to learn the nuts and bolts and best practices when you want to get engaged and work with the media in your area. Our colleagues have crafted a comprehensive training for this session where you will learn the difference between a media advisory and a press release. You'll also learn how to develop and frame key messages while receiving tips and best practices for working with the media. We've also invited two of your colleagues, Rebecca Muletto Cornell. She is a foster grandparent director in Southwestern Pennsylvania. Rebecca is also the president of the AmeriCorps Seniors Pennsylvania State Association, and Fred Lugo, RSVP director at Coming of Age in Austin, Texas. Rebecca and Fred will share their experience and talk about practical application. How do you use what you learned today? They have both been tremendously successful in garnering media for their projects. I believe that if you utilize the lessons from today in your local programs, you'll be able to work with the media to tell a story that distinguishes you from other volunteer opportunities and garners the attention that your programs and your volunteers deserve. So earlier, I mentioned that we were collaborating with staff from Forrest Marsh, AmeriCorps' PR agency. With us today from Forrest Marsh is Jennifer Strom. Jennifer is a senior earned media consultant with Forrest Marsh, where she leads strategies and projects for several of their government clients. She is also an adjunct professor at the George Washington Milken Institute School of Public Health. With more than 20 years of working with national and local media, she is passionate about translating complex issues into compelling messages and supporting high quality news coverage for her clients. So we are really excited to have her here today to help us where we can learn. So please join me in welcoming Jennifer Strom. Jennifer?
Thank you so much for that warm welcome, Atalia. I'm so excited to be here with everyone today and to see the diverse places that everybody's coming from in the chat. Thank you for sharing. And also, as we go through our presentation today, please add your questions in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. Before we go through our agenda and our objectives for today's training, I'm going to ask our support panelist, Mike, to please share our poll. We have two questions for you, just asking about your experience with the media. So if you could please go ahead and answer these, and we will come back to this in just a minute to see what the results are. So our agenda for today is I'm going to talk about a couple of key topics about when we talk about working with the media. And that's really, what's happening with today's media, understanding what's happening there, telling your story, and just some concrete tips for working with reporters in your area. And then, as Atalia mentioned, that you'll hear from two wonderful colleagues for tips from the field. Next slide, please. And our objectives for today really focus on, again, understanding changes in the news media, why and how to develop key messages, and how to use those messages when you're working with with the media in your area, as well as when you are developing materials. And we'll talk again about best practices for engaging with the media and preparing for media interviews and execution. So I see about 79% of people have participated in our poll. If you have not yet, please go ahead and answer our two questions. The first question is, have you ever shared information about your program with the media? And the second question is, how comfortable are you with reaching out to the media? We'll give everyone another minute to finish participating in the poll, and then we'll see what the results are. Great. Okay, we can go ahead and share the results of the poll. And in terms of people who have shared information about their program with the media, 61% said sometimes. That's terrific. 21% said often, and 18% said never. And how comfortable are you with reaching out to the media? We had 40% say they're comfortable, 41% say not very comfortable, and that's fine because that's what we're here to do with our training. And 19% said very comfortable. So great, a lot of different perspectives on working with the media. Next slide, please. So now you can't really talk about working with the media without talking about how the media and journalism has changed in the last decade or so. Next slide, please. So first of all, why work with the media? And Natalia hit on a lot of these points in our opening. Increasing awareness is a great reason why. It's important to have the community understand what you do and why it's important, and the role AmeriCorps seniors plays. Also, attracting and retaining volunteers is a big one. You can also sometimes gain interest from other donors in supporting your programs, and just in general, increasing support from the overall community. And the people at AmeriCorps nationally work with the media every day to help tell AmeriCorps' story. You can see here on the right, CEO Michael Smith is speaking with a news station about Public Health AmeriCorps, and he just recently did a number of interviews about that program. Next slide, please. Who can contact the media? Anyone. Reporters want to hear from you about news in your community, and AmeriCorps volunteers have great stories to tell. Next slide, please. I think it's also important to know that news outlets have specific reporting focused on older adults. So you can see that here with US News and World Report, the New York Times, the Associated Press, they have senior specific sections where they're talking about topics of importance to older adults. Next slide. And also, our news in our communities sometimes feels a little more leaning negative, but there are special sections that focus on the positive. And news around programs in your communities can be very inspiring to the community. And here's an example of the nightly news and the Today Show, where they focus on inspiring stories and good news, uplifting, funny, inspirational. Next slide, please. But as I mentioned, the industry has changed quite a bit. We're really transitioning away from print TV, radio into digital spaces more than ever. This has caused huge disruption in the traditional news industry. The internet, mobile devices, and social media in the last 20 years have really changed how people access and also the creation and delivery of news stories. And it's also reflected in the way that community members get their news. According to Pew Research, a majority of US adults, 82%, say they often or sometimes get news from a smartphone, computer, or tablet. And half of Americans at least sometimes get news from social media, and about 1/4 say the same about podcasts. Next slide, please. But that's not always the same for older Americans. So for people ages 50 to 64, digital devices is important, but so is television, followed by radio and print. People who are 65 plus are preferring television, with 85% getting their news from there, followed by digital devices, print, and radio. Next slide, please. The industry, as I mentioned, is changing quite a bit, and they're feeling much more scrutiny, a lack of trust. The industry strives for likes and shares because of that digital phenomenon and sharing on social media. And they also have fewer resources and fewer advertisers in some cases. But for reporters, their jobs have also changed quite a bit. They're wearing many more hats. For example, a print reporter at your local newspaper also might be sharing their stories on their social media. They also might be recording short videos to accompany those stories, or participating in podcasts to promote the work that they're doing. They're publishing more quickly than ever. Our news cycle is 24/7. So in the past, they may have time to collect all the information about a story and publish it. Whereas now you'll see stories unfolding minute by minute with news reports happening in real time with those details. They're also reaching a broader audience because of that digital phenomenon and receiving more feedback on the stories that they publish through commentaries and social media. Next slide, please. So let's talk about how you can tell your story as part of this. Next slide. When you think about journalism, most journalists kind of follow these kind of 8 core news values about how they make decisions of what they're going to cover. So when you're thinking about your story, you want to think about these 8 news values and how are you tying into some of them. So location is an easy one because you're typically going to want to target the people who are in your community, the reporters who are in the community that you're serving. Prominence is another important news value. Does your story involve a public figure? So for example, if you don't have a public figure already volunteering on your board or with your program, you could invite them to come to an event, for example, or serve on a panel discussion. Timeliness is also important because again, that 24/7 news cycle, reporters want to break the story. They want to be first with a story. And so making sure that they receive information in a timely manner is extremely important. Impact. Does your story affect a large number of people in your community? Can you quantify that impact in your community? Human interest and personal stories are a lot of where we see news from AmeriCorps seniors, and featuring volunteers and personal stories is a great way to get interest in news coverage for your community. And being current with tying into a current or a broader issue that's happening in your community is also important. Think about what are those topics that are important to your area that's happening now. One that's happening is COVID-19, the pandemic recovery. Are there things that are happening within AmeriCorps seniors that can possibly tie into that? Or for example, the academic achievement gap in schools. And then another news value is something unexpected or completely out of the ordinary. For example, in my community last week, we very tragically had a small aircraft crash into some electric lines, and very unusual. It left power out for over 100,000 people in our community, and it was very unexpected and out of the ordinary. And again, conflict or controversy, we see this quite often, not something that we proactively want to promote, but it is a news value that our reporters are covering. And so it's something to keep in mind. So telling your story, next slide. What stories can you tell? There are so many wonderful things happening in your community and with your program. So new funding from AmeriCorps seniors, calling for volunteers. You could share a summary, end of year summary of what's happening with your program. You could promote an event. You could feature an extraordinary volunteer or an extraordinary achievement by your program overall. And one that stood out to me was in Genesee County Office for the Aging in New York. They hosted a screening of a movie called All the Lonely People, which is a documentary featuring stories of resilience in the face of loneliness. And following this movie screening, they held a panel discussion with the filmmakers and community leaders to talk about ways to develop resilience and implement strategies to combat social isolation. Next slide, please. We see lots of great stories of AmeriCorps seniors in the news, and we wanted to share with you a few more of those. One is here in Michigan City, Indiana. The Times of Northwest Indiana featured the AmeriCorps Senior Foster Grandparents Program, and they interviewed a volunteer, the program manager, and discussed the impact that program is having in the local schools and gave opportunities and information about how to get more involved. And you can see here that story in the center has some really nice photos you can actually click through. We are sharing that link in the chat if you'd like to take a closer look at that full story. It's a really nice feature story on the program. And you can see this nice quote from Judy Whitcomb, who is a volunteer. And she says, when you have taught for as long as I have before retiring, you need a kid fix. And that's what the Foster Grandparents Program is about. It's a unique opportunity to work with students and help them academically and or emotionally. And it's good for me to be teaching children again. It helps everyone. And the next story we have here is from Louisville, Kentucky, where AmeriCorps senior volunteers delivered care baskets to area firefighters as part of the September 11th National Day of Service and Remembrance. And it does look like the reporter came out, took a really nice picture and wrote a nice story. But if for some reason something happened on that day where the reporter couldn't come to cover this, you could also take your own picture and send your own caption in. And we have put this link also, if we could add that to the chat, that would be great. I see the question about, can we have a link to the video? And yes, we can definitely share that following the presentation. Next slide. Oh, no, we're good here. In Easton, Maryland, Upper Shore Aging's Retired and Senior Volunteer Program talks about recruiting and placing older adults in a diverse range of volunteer activities. And here, volunteer Gil Slagle is in the farmer's market. And he says, I was born and raised in Kent County and was looking for a way to give back. I got on the internet and searched for volunteer opportunities, and this program came up. I enjoy interacting with the seniors coming through the farmer's market and helping them with their produce. I'm interested in doing additional volunteering with the Chester River Hospital Center Auxiliary. And we also have another story here about neighbors helping neighbors to fight hunger in Jersey Shore, PA. And they deliver homegrown fresh vegetables to combat hunger in their region. And what I really liked about this story is they talk about their impact. They say with 6 active programs, the center donates over 5,000 pounds of food every month and prepares more than 1,000 home-cooked meals and serves almost 900 people. So having that kind of information to share with your reporters is a great way to get their interest. And as you can see, as we talked about with the news values earlier, that's showing a big impact in the community. Next slide, please. In Pittsfield, Massachusetts, the Retired Senior Volunteer Program of Berkshire County launched its new visitor center and invited media to come cover that launch. And this is a place where people can come to ask questions and also get reduced rates on theater tickets. In Pensacola, Florida, Santa Rosa Community Services is offering free classes to seniors on how to use technology such as email, video chats, and Facebook. And so this is a nice way to make people aware of that service and that new program that's available. Next slide, please. So how do we start to get that kind of news coverage? Well, you start with your message. The message is a very simple concept that's distilled into sound bites. Think of a tweet. It's easily articulated and memorable. So here's an example on the AmeriCorps Seniors website. Make giving back your second act. Get involved and make a positive difference in your community. AmeriCorps Seniors volunteers serve with organizations dedicated to helping others. Next slide. And there's a lot of great information about your programs already available with messaging. So here you can see some messages about the foster grandparent program, RSVP, and the senior companion program that are short, succinct, and available for you to think about using in your materials and messaging. So how do we take that and turn it into a story? We're going to go to the next slide. You want to think about 3 things. Your problem, what problem are you solving, your solution, and a call to action. Next slide. And we have I think we missed one. Can you go back? Okay, nope. Next slide, please. That's fine. So let's talk about the anatomy of a message. Your message should be concise, as we said, memorable, and yeah, that was the slide I was thinking about. But let's finish the slide and then we'll go to this. Thanks. Great. Okay. So it's concise, it's memorable, and it supports your narrative, your story arc. Supporting each message, you want to have proof points. And there's 2 types of proof points: facts, data, trends on one hand. On the second hand, anecdotes, analogies, and contrasts. Next slide. So let's take that problem, solution, call to action, and break it down into how you could write something for your program. So under problem, you want to articulate, well, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Why should people care? And how does that affect you or your audience? And then under that, you want to back it up with facts, statements, anecdotes, analogies, those proof points we talked about earlier. And then the solution, what's new in that solution? What do people need to know, and how are you solving that problem? And again, you want to back that up with your statements and anecdotes. And then finally, your call to action. What do you want people to do? In most cases, you're going to have them go to your website, maybe email or call for more information. And the proof point is basically just the where should you send them. Okay, next slide. So let's take a look at this in action with the foster grandparent program. This is a hypothetical message and proof point. And you can see I have a couple graphics on here. So for example, older residents in Knoxville are helping to guide students to higher academic achievement through the AmeriCorps Seniors Foster Grandparent Program. And on the left, we have some data. 1,000 volunteers serve in nearly 100 county schools. On average, each volunteer serves 20 hours a week, and there are 100 positions still available. And then on the right, we're going to illustrate that with a story about Audrey West, or as she's called, Granny West, who's a welcome presence in a first grade classroom, where she provides learning assistance and individual attention to students who need it the most. She's a valued teaching aide, mentor, and friend, and even earned a starring role in a student illustrated book. Next slide, please. When you're creating your messages, you want to think simple. You want to tell the bottom line up front. A lot of people, when you're writing out content, you leave the important part at the end, which is completely normal. But in journalism, you want to switch that around and tell your headline up front. You don't want to be careful not to use jargon or acronyms. You want to use the active voice and make connections, again, that analogies and illustration of your message. And always keeping your audience at top of mind and using visuals to help also tell your story and support your message. Next slide. So where do you use these messages? Well, we've said in reaching out to the media, but also on your website, social media, flyers, brochures, and much more. We know that people need to see messages many, many times before they actually start to stick. So we use them all over. Next slide, please. And you'll see a lot of the National Senior AmeriCorps messages in resources that are available to you. The wonderful team at AmeriCorps Seniors produces many different toolkits and templates that you have access to. There are also national service reports with state-specific data. And as I mentioned, that's important because you want to give the context of how this program is supporting your overall community to your reporters, and how does your program fit in with that bigger picture. So having that state data could be very helpful. We also have logos and brand guidelines and photo galleries available. But again, having your own photos and video, even if it's not professional, even if you just use your personal mobile phone, that's fine because it gives reporters a good idea of what kind of content that they could gather with your story. Video and B-roll is also available from AmeriCorps Seniors. We're going to take a look at that in a second. And we also have some new marketing materials, brochures about each of the programs. And also in your link, resources for telling with your story on the chat. If you click on that, you can see that there are template materials in there for 2 resources. There's a press release, which is a template press release you can use to announce a grant about receiving a grant about AmeriCorps Seniors. And then a media advisory sample, which is what you would use to invite a reporter to come to an event. And that's a template as well that you can use related to National Volunteer Week. Next slide. And here's some examples of information that you can get from that national service report I mentioned. So it gives you a little bit of detail about the AmeriCorps Seniors Foster Grandparent Program. And in 2022, you can see that foster grandparents in Tennessee served more than 3,490 young people with special needs, which is just terrific. On the next slide, we're going to take a minute to look at a video that is being available to everyone here. This is the 60-second version, and we also have 15 and 30-second versions that you can use in your community. So I will pause and we can listen to this video.
My favorite part about volunteering with AmeriCorps seniors is the people.
It's just serving them whatever their desire is, whatever they would like to achieve, goal for that day.
For one thing, it keeps me active, which is a good thing. You also feel useful. It supports the community.
It's a very good feeling to know that you're really helping people to live longer and to live better.
Volunteering with AmeriCorps makes me feel needed, confident. I can look at a child and glad that I had a hand in participating in their development.
Life is a journey. We all have a purpose. Define your gifts and talents and use them to serve.
Wonderful, thank you. And again, these links will be available to you, and this content is freely available to share with media in your area. We haven't talked specifically about public service announcements, but some media do have time set aside where they will run free public service announcements to benefit the community, and this is an example of something they can run. Now we're going to dive into those concrete tips for working with the media. Next slide, please. So where do you start? Well, I know a lot of people have already been doing this, but one thing you could consider is maybe revisiting some of your media and thinking about, are there new people that you could reach out to? If you don't have a list already of media, you can start by really watching, listening, and searching for their contact information. There are databases of reporters that can be expensive, and a lot of the information is actually publicly available on the news stations or in the website, for example, for print newsletters and newspapers. So I really suggest just writing down the names of the reporters who you see, who you think might be interested in the story, looked up their contact information, and then we're going to go to the next slide. And the steps we really recommend taking is just starting with an email, and we call it a pitch email. It could be something that just simply introduces you and your program, but we also like to maybe suggest a story idea related to some of those news principles that we talked about earlier, and the messages that you've already developed. Then you want to gather your support materials, such as your video or your photos. Some people also, if you have somebody who's graphically inclined, you could even explore making an infographic with some data. And then send your email to the reporter. And I really suggest following up with a phone call. And a lot of times the people that you're seeing on the TV are also working behind the scenes with producers and editors who help make decisions about stories that they will cover. So they must usually pitch that story in a news conversation. And so, making sure that they have all the information they need to pitch that story and see if they can move forward with it that's what this process is about. So next slide. Here is an example of an email pitch. And again, you want to keep it really short and sweet. Reporters get over 100 or more emails a day with story ideas. And so keeping it really short and scannable that they can view on a mobile phone is really important. So you want to have your subject line and then the body of the email. You can see here we're focusing on a human interest story that is solving a problem in the community related to academic achievement. And again, we're going back to our example of Granny West. And you can see how we started with her as a grandparent volunteer who was featured in a student's illustrated book. Again, very heartwarming, very visual. You could see that book being potentially featured in a print or a broadcast story. But then we're also tying it into the bigger picture of the importance of the foster grandparent program, how many children overall the program is supporting, that impact, how many volunteers, and the need. And the call to action is that we're asking them to interview Granny West and learn more about the program. Next slide. So once you get interest from a reporter, and let me just add one thing before I go into that. To stand out and to really cut through the clutter of those hundreds of emails they receive every day, I think it's really important to build relationships with your local reporters. And so, you know, you can offer to meet them for coffee or offer to host them just for a short visit to a program without, you know, expecting them to necessarily do a story, to kind of build those relationships and be a source of information about, you know, what's impacting and what's happening with older adults in their community. And so once you get interest, what happens? Well, again, these reporters are extremely busy. As I mentioned, they're wearing many hats. And so we need to make it as easy as possible for them to cover our story and want to come back again and again. So being responsive, writing back to them as soon as they email you as quickly as possible, being flexible with your time to be available to them, providing them with images or video, and also ensuring ahead of time that you have the proper permission to film, especially if you're going to be involving children in schools, which we know there are privacy issues there. Next slide, please. So during the interview, you really want to think about, well, what do you want to achieve with this interview? Do you want to have new volunteers? Do you want to have more support from the community, or is there something else? But go in with having a goal for your interview. Then you want to prioritize your information for the reporter and repeat and highlight the core messages that you've developed, and really gear towards strong language. So here's an example of tentative language versus strong language. So we don't want to say we may, we want to say here's what we're committed to, or we think, here's what we know, or it seems, well, it's clear that. So using strong language helps support really positive stories. And before you do the interview, you want to think about a few questions that you can actually ask a reporter. So you can ask them, have you covered this topic before? Or what else do you want to talk about? Or who else are you interviewing? And if they have some information that they come to you with, maybe asking them where they got that. So you can be best prepared for going into the interview. Next slide. And during the interview, we have a few tools we like to share. So repeating, and again, returning to your core messages, pausing. A great way is to have a water bottle nearby. And if you need to think about a response, you can take a sip and take a second to think about what you'd like to say. Reframe the question. If you get a question that you're not super happy with, well, reframe it and say it in a way that you are leaning towards what you want to say. Flagging information is also important, again, because reporters are busy. We want to make sure we highlight and organize information for them. If you're in person, you can do that with a hand gesture. And you can also say, well, what's really important is, that's a great way to flag that information. And sometimes we know interviews go in a direction that we're not necessarily prepared for or happy with, but it's very easy to kind of bridge it back to where you want to stay. And so next slide. We use the ABCs to bridge our interview back to what you want to talk about. So acknowledge, you can say, I understand where that question's come from, or that question comes from. Bridge, but that brings me back to my main point, which is your messages. And then again, finish with what you want to prioritize, your core message. And if you watch the Sunday morning news shows and any politician, you see them doing this technique very, very well. Next slide. And finally, also in those resources link that we shared, we have these handouts for tips on how to prepare for an interview. A lot of interviews today are happening on Zoom, again, because of the pandemic. So we have a lot of tips for you on how to set up success. And definitely want to highlight that closing any web browsers, email, anything else that can be distracting to you during the interview is important, and also silencing your phone. In terms of what to wear, we recommend wearing solids or large prints, no small prints, checkered patterns, or stripes, because that vibrates on screen. Maintaining eye contact with the camera. And again, having a tea or a water nearby if you need a sip, that's totally fine if you're not doing a live interview. Next slide. On the phone, you can have your messages nearby, but you don't want to be reading them. Your voice is your body language. So you want to stand up to convey energy, maintain inflection, speak a bit slower so the reporter can jot down accurately what you're saying. And remember to take a pause for the reporter so they can jump in with questions that they might have. And finally, if you're in person, sit forward in your chair, maintain good posture, keep your hands in your lap. Sometimes people get very interested in like moving their hands a lot, and that can sometimes be distracting. You can see that here on the Zoom. So we really recommend you could hold a pen in that case, or a pencil to remove the moving hands. But you can use your hand to flag an important point for a reporter in person. Smile and stay calm, of course, never get angry, and always convey your openness and your passion for your work. We know everybody here is so passionate about improving the community, and having that come through is really great in your interviews. And finally, how can you overcome fear and nervousness? Everybody has fear and nervousness, even the reporters you see on camera at times. Practice makes perfect. So think ahead of time what kind of questions you could be asked, and practice saying those answers. But again, you don't have to be perfect, because we're all human, and we've all seen things, especially in the last year or two, go wrong on the news. You've seen animals coming in, you've seen lots of things happening on Zoom, and we're all human, so it's totally fine. And just because you feel it doesn't mean that they see that you're nervous. That confidence and projecting is like 75% of the challenge of doing a media interview. And again, it's really not about you personally, it's about your audience and telling your great program story. And it's very helpful right before to take a few deep breaths, do a little stretching, and again, just be yourself. And thank you again so much for having me. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Rebecca.
Thank you. So today I'm here to share with you some things that I've learned along the way over the past almost 20 years being involved with the foster grandparent program. Next. So the media is an outlet to gain visibility and will be our pathway to our program exposure, whether it be the radio, local or national TV, public service announcements, articles in newspapers, newsletters, magazine, podcasts, the list goes on and on. So you can see there are so many different ways and different types of media that you can become involved with. Next. I can remember when I first started, I thought, why doesn't everybody know about this program? I'm with the foster grandparent program. There should be a foster grandparent in every child-based agency around. And a lot of times, many programs such as ours have never had or had very little media coverage. And you might say, well, why is that? Typically because we look at the media coverage as having a very high cost. We can't afford it. Perhaps we don't think we have the time or the staff, we don't know where to start or who to talk to. And like was mentioned before, there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of nonprofits out there, and there are so many volunteer opportunities that need to be filled. So we really need to stand out from the competition. And yes, there can be room for all of us. We all have our own little niche. So I learned pretty quickly that the media wants stories. And we have a big benefit because we're not in this alone. We have many different platforms. Yes, we have our small little program locally, but we have our state and our national programs, such as all of you here today, and most importantly, AmeriCorps overall. So we can feed off of each other, and especially AmeriCorps with all of their stories and all of their talking points. So we need to utilize all of our assets when we consider visibility. So if you're reaching out to the media, sometimes you might feel like, why are they always telling me no? Maybe you have been reaching out and there's no response, no one returns calls or emails, or maybe you did an online inquiry. So first of all, we have to ask ourselves, is this story that we want to tell, is it of interest to others, or is it only of interest to you yourself as an individual? So the media is seeking interest stories. We need to create a picture that's visually appealing whenever we do make that pitch. So I always like to reference that as, in the day, I'll say it as you are watching or you are listening to a football game or a story on a radio, you are visually creating something in your mind of you are there and you can picture yourself at that game or in that opportunity. So you want to be in that same kind of circumstance. You need to show them how you can stand out from the crowd and, ask yourself, what can I do or say that would make somebody stop and listen and want to look at us, make us want to read more, learn more, and become involved. Next. Beth Caldwell said it very well. She's local here in Pittsburgh, and she does publicity, and she's great at what she does. And she has told me it's a win-win-win. And I use that term even whenever I'm out recruiting, right? It's a win for everyone. So publicity is a win for the media because they're getting great content. It's a win for us because we're getting that exposure, and it's a win for everyone because we are trying to help solve problems that's featured in the media. So her suggestion always is be ready and be available. Next, please. My number one suggestion is the hard part. Take the leap. What are you waiting for? You're always going to be busy. You're never going to have enough time. You can't wait for always things to be exactly perfect. And there's always going to be room for improvement along the way. Remember back whenever you first started, you're so much better than you were then. Think about that. It's the same kind of concept. Allow and permit yourself to learn and grow along the way. Say yes to opportunities, no matter if it's a little out of your comfort zone. Try to take that leap. If you never start, it'll never happen. And that truly is the hardest part, is the starting. So you can do this. And I believe that you can. Next. So I soon realized some things that I needed to do. I needed to be strategic. I needed to ask myself who, what, when, where, why, and how. Think about, who do you want to reach? What is it that you want to share? Is it timely? When and how do you want to share it? What do you want to share? What are you trying to achieve? And how are you going to accomplish all of these tasks? And overall, there's a goal. You want more people to become aware of who you are and what you do, because you want more volunteers, you want more stations and donations. That end result allows your program to grow. So I realized that my interests, like I mentioned before, may not be of interest to others. So look for journalists that have interests in what your area of focus is. So maybe it's a senior paper, journals, magazines, news stories. radio stations, anything like that can be a big, big plus for you. I then went on and analyzed, what is my approach to things? What I was saying, what I was asking. So for example, with the foster grandparent program, we're looking to recruit volunteers. So I had to think about using happenings to piggyback on, such as maybe going back to school, or maybe it's how children need additional help past COVID. How can we help them? So utilize your performance measures that you submit, right? Get data from local, state, national about studies that have been happening on. Take that initiative and make that your first step. Next. So there's 3 things that you can help set yourself apart. Now, this is in my own personal experience. 1 is to be credible. 2 is to be a respected resource. And 3 is just to be prepared. Next. So that first part is just to be credible. You want to be seen. Do people know who you are? Do people know about your program? Are you who you say you are? Do you have a good reputation? And you might think to yourself, how do I get there? Remember, small steps can take you places to allow others to know who you are. And I suggest celebrate everything, whether it's a certificate, an achievement, an award, an articles, a story, a milestone, year-end results, studies, anything. Engage yourself in speaking opportunities, and most importantly, your testimonials. So talk, network, and build those relationships. And remember, small steps do matter. Next. The second step is just be a respectable resource. Position yourself to be the expert in the field. So how can your program become a valuable resource to others? What can you talk about that is visually appealing and interesting to other people? What problems can you solve within your program? And what is special about your program? Next. And then that third step is just be prepared. This has been the key for us. So there's a couple different components. One is just to create a plan. You never know when an opportunity will arise. You could run into the media. Maybe you are in the public, or maybe you're at an event and you start talking to someone. This could then lead you into getting a news article or having an interest in something. So try to be proactive. And in the plan, I have the following things. As mentioned before, have that media list, make a spreadsheet, have all of that down. Another thing that I do is I have my bio with a photo already ready. These are things that you can prepare in advance. A little couple sentences about what your program does and how it could benefit others. Only needs to be a couple sentences. And again, some stories with some photos. So that is creating your plan. The second part of that is determining your timeline. How often do you want to be noticed? Creating an ongoing schedule. Okay, the more that you're put out there, the more people that know about you. So say, for example, you're using social media, but your volunteers aren't of the age, or maybe they don't use social media, but there are family members, there are community members that can then go and relay that message. So it's kind of a trickling effect. We find that that is very important whenever we are trying to recruit and get the word out about our program. So there's just some examples. Weekly could be social media, emails, or short tips. Monthly could be newsletters, maybe an article in a magazine or a flyer, or maybe there's some information on your website. And you could either do quarterly, seasonally, however that looks like, and then just focus on certain things. Maybe at the new year, volunteer week, back to school time, or maybe there's a recognition or event period within your program that you can focus on. And then the third step of being prepared is just creating certain topics based off of your timeline. So by doing that, what you're doing is you're able to have a schedule and fall back on that. You don't have to recreate the wheel each and every year. You can revamp, excuse me, what you've already done in the past and add new content or add to a new story that has just been published, but you're already having these things in your backpack and you're ready to roll. So it's not like something that you would have to generate at the spur of the moment, because that time could have already passed you by and they've already moved on to the next person, especially if they are seeking you out and want information from you. Next, please. So all of these steps are going to get you noticed. What you're solving, how can you help? Is it relevant and interesting? Do you have a clear message? What are your volunteers doing and who is it impacting? So remember, with impact, the volunteers or individuals included could be, especially for foster grandparents, it's the seniors, the children, the families, the teachers, the station. Have them be a part of your storyline. They will make you credible. These testimonials and the stories, they're going to show the impact. So yes, it's great that they go and say, oh, well, we love grandma and she's the greatest. That's wonderful and perfect, but how does that affect the overall outcome of that child, or what are they doing? So I like to always question myself before I even do a testimonial. Question whether it's either for a volunteer, maybe a station. How has that program changed your life? Has it made you overcome loneliness, being active in your community? Maybe it's a social outlet for them, or even just self-worth. What makes your foster grandparent experience unique? How did the foster grandparent solve a classroom challenge, maybe to a station? What are the benefits of having a grandparent or being a volunteer? Would you recommend others to have a foster grandparent? Or would you recommend other people becoming involved in the program? And what was your main concern about having a foster grandparent? Or what was your main concern about becoming a volunteer? These questions will get you interests instead of how is it going? Oh, grandma's great. These will be helpful whenever you're trying to get more specific information, okay? And they will help you with the problem solving. Next. So I just wanted to add that, you want intriguing storylines. So instead of saying, I need volunteers, you can change that up. Why every child or school needs a foster grandparent. Instead of grandparents help children in the school, AmeriCorps Senior Foster Grandparent Program helps bridge educational gaps. Another one, our program keeps the elderly active. Combat loneliness by helping local youth. You can see that the bolded information is much more attractive. It's giving you more of a picture, and that's what we're seeking here. Provide good visuals. Those photographs are wonderful. The information should be heartwarming, and it's something that you want others to talk about after the fact. Is there a reason to learn more? And always include your evidence, your data, the surveys, statistics from the performance measures. Next. So this image here, you all should have received an email just recently, and this image was in that email. Remember when I was talking about piggybacking? This is another great opportunity. Utilize AmeriCorps, your sponsor, the National State Association, your local dovias, and your other partnerships. You can share on yours and other platforms to help get your stories out. So you don't always have to go with the big guns with news articles, because these can be small steps that gradually get you there. You're going to share stories, you're going to like things, and these things will help build your credibility. It'll also gain you exposure, and that's the main thing that you're trying to do. So again, this image was already provided for you, and also there was another part of this where it was talking about why volunteer. Other really great data that can be shared in your social media, in your storylines. Refer back to how people can get involved. Next. The next one is images that I wanted to share that we have on our website. Allow the media to know that we are here for you. Okay, are you looking for volunteerism, senior volunteers, community impact, et cetera, et cetera? These are ways that people can see who we are and what we do. Next. This next image here shows our team. It shows everybody's name, their position, their contact information, and what do they do? So then that way we're putting another visual in their mind. Okay. Oh, they look really friendly. Oh, I can talk to them about this, this, and this. So this is always another good factor. Okay. Next. And lastly, I just wanted to share this as well. Remember, whenever I was talking about wanting to say that you are a part of a resource, be that expert in the field. This is an example of our newsletter. At the very end, we always put your community resource team. This allows everyone to know that we are here for them. We're trying to provide them with a resource no matter what it is. So use every opportunity you can to showcase yourself that you are the expert in the field. So thank you, and I hope this helped.
Hello, everyone. And since I'm from Austin, Texas, let me just say howdy. I've been with RSVP for 25 years, and let me clarify that we changed our name from Coming of Age Austin to Engaged Travis County 2 months ago. That's where RSVP Travis County exists. I'm wondering really how much more I can share. For this presentation, I'm using practical applications learned throughout the years that have proven successful for me. Some you've already heard probably many times, but it just shows what works. It reinforces what you're hearing from AmeriCorps senior staff, from your colleagues, and today from Jennifer and Rebecca. It'll be a summary of sorts of what has been shared today. The first part of the presentation will be a brief review of a few important elements. I call it the basics. It'll also focus on a few things that will give you a different insight on some things learned, as well as tips you don't often see in resource information. Hopefully, it'll help you. I'm going to call that part of the presentation Beyond the Basics. So let's go to the next slide, please. So first of all, I've got to thank Jennifer and Rebecca for their presentations. I certainly learned a lot. Jennifer did say two things that caught my attention: gaining interest from potential donors and volunteer recruitment. That really resonated with me because ultimately that's what we'd love for our stories to affect. And honestly, I don't know how much more I can share with you that hasn't already been shared, but I'll try to add some other points and give it a personal point of view. In other words, my approach on working with the media. The basics are what I do when working with the media. It comes down to two categorical areas: planning and communication. So let's start with planning. Jennifer said it earlier. I'll just reinforce it. Compile a media contact list. That's the first thing my team does. Sit down with your team. It could be staff, advisory council, board members, colleagues, or volunteers to help identify those in the media who are likely to be interested in what you do. Think about news directors, reporters, journalists, editors, general managers, bureau chiefs, and producers of both written and broadcast media outlets. Find out who the ones are who assign the stories. They are the ones who determine if you make the news. You've really got to do a little work here. So scour the news and see who's reporting on what, and build your list. Make sure your list includes daily newspapers, community newspapers, e-newsletters, TV news stations, radio stations, bloggers, social media influencers. You could check on newspaper websites to see who has reported recently about older adults, about volunteerism, about civic engagement, or about anything related to your services. Or you could just simply contact the media outlet and ask for the name and contact information of those responsible for covering your particular issue. Now, secondly, oh, I forgot one thing. Yeah, don't forget about photo editors. Somebody mentioned it earlier. They want great photos. Photos can say 1,000 words. Always keep those photos at the ready and know who those photo editors are and photographers are. So next, set a time frame to get things done. I have a background in planning, so it's what keeps me organized. I build my outreach strategy by having an end date in mind, and then I work backwards from there. I make sure our timeline, our time frame is realistic and builds momentum up to the news event. I make sure our team allows plenty of time to craft our message, and it needs to be brilliant. Once I've got that, an alert is sent 2 to 3 weeks before the event to reporters and editors, and then again the day before. I guess what I'm trying to say here is that timing is everything. For a press release, it's usually the day of the event or immediately after the event. And when I say immediately after, I mean within minutes. That's what works for me. Lastly, determine your key message. Let me stress, this is what I want the takeaway to be. I guess I should say, this is what you want the takeaway to be from the potential story about your issue or event. Work with your team to craft a handful of messages that highlight the purpose of the event and important details like when, where, and who is involved. So that covered planning. Now, next is communication. I guess this too could be part of planning, but I see this as an essential standalone element. So I start by thinking about who I want as our spokesperson. Is it me? Is it a member of my board or advisory council? Whoever it is, their name and contact information is included on all media alerts and news releases. And I do make sure the spokesperson is involved in planning the media outreach. So more about media alerts and press releases. They are the two main tools we use to communicate messages to the media. So what's the difference? Jennifer did cover it earlier. Media alerts, they do just that. It alerts the media to an upcoming event. It's like an invitation. I like to send out two. As I said earlier, one well in advance of the event, the second the day before. A tip that I received from a general manager is that the best time to send the second advisory is the day before an event or early in the morning on the day of, before news teams meet to plan out the day's stories. Now, admittedly, I'm still trying to figure out if work from home has changed this for media outlets. Anyway, advisories should be no more than 1 page in length. And I include only the vital details of the event. You know, it was already covered, the who, what, when, where, and why. Now, news releases, they include more information than alerts. They can be used to announce an event or issue, its impact, and a call to action. Think of it as a news story, a concise news story. I like to include direct quotes from a volunteer, a station representative, the beneficiary of a service, or a staff person. Again, plan that out in advance. Your goal is to make it compelling enough to get coverage. And hey, if you are an RSVP, FGP, or SEP staff person, I know you know how to craft a compelling story. That's just our business. So let's go to the next slide. Beyond the basics. That focuses on those other tips working with the media that have been very useful to me. So the first bullet there is connections. This is all about building relationships. Develop a relationship with the media instead of just asking them for coverage. Reach out before you need something, and not only because you need something. I frame my outreach as, how can we work together? Yes, things do change over the course of 25 years. I came from the old school that inundating reporters with calls would increase my chances of getting covered. Well, I find that that's just not so true today. Inundating them with calls and emails on anything and everything decreased rather than increased our chances of being covered. So what do? Well, you provide them with new, timely, accurate information on your issues and events to help build your relationships with reporters. That can lead them to view you as a reliable resource. Rebecca already said it. Think of yourself as the community's subject matter experts on older adult volunteerism. Don't you like that? Yeah. You are the subject matter expert in your community on older adult volunteerism and other issues where your program has a great community impact. If you aren't already doing that, start thinking of yourself in that way. You want the media to think of you and call you first on certain subjects or issues. Now, here's the secret to my success. I don't work alone. I know of colleagues who don't quite see the value of working with other organizations other than volunteer stations. Again, I don't work alone. I can bring greater attention to our program when my team, when my board and advisory council are involved in community planning issues, community events, and local policy development with organizations, associations, coalitions, and groups who are at the forefront of making a difference in this community and always seem to attract attention. If they're attracting attention, then you present yourself with more opportunities to not only shape how services are affected and delivered in your community, but you're also presented with opportunities to know those in the media who may become your strongest advocates. Next, be prepared. Yes, that was already covered. It does sound like a carryover actually from my Boy Scout days, but this is so true. You need to be prepared because you never know when your pitch will be accepted. If you are offering to talk about an issue, an event, or your program and its achievements, make sure you know the topic well and that you are ready to dazzle everyone about your AmeriCorps Seniors program. So give it thought. Write up a paragraph or two and practice, practice, practice. Practice what you plan to say. And once you've done that, practice it again. Going unscripted. Now, it might work once or twice, but it does not make for a sound media strategy. This is an area where I've learned my lesson. Before you send out a pitch, make sure you are ready to deliver the expertise that you are offering and that you're ready to present it with authority. Oh, and yes, make it succinct. No one wants to listen to someone who rambles and never seems to land the plane. Deliver like a pro and you will become known as a reliable and valuable resource. You will become the first person the media will contact. Know that your media wins build momentum. When you're on the news, when you get quoted, when a picture is in your local newspaper, share it everywhere. Put it on your website, put it on your social media, put it on your e-newsletter, share it everywhere. Every win helps you build momentum and it adds to your credibility. The more credible you become, the easier it will be to get media coverage. Another tip is to sponsor or host an event. Now that people are adjusting to our new normal, people are anxious for in-person events. After having gone for almost 2 years without in-person events, the media is giving more attention to these events right now. Seize that opportunity. Hosting or sponsoring an in-person event provides opportunities not only for you to reach customers and community partners, but they also afford the chance for you to meet face-to-face with the media. There are a variety of events that you could host or sponsor, but for the sake of obtaining media attention, here are a few ideas to inspire you to think outside the box. Older Americans Month. Host an Older Americans Month event or partner with other senior service providers to host an event. Think big. Think of senior service booths or tables, entertainment from senior groups, health and wellness tables. Have it at a senior center parking lot. Get food donated. And how do you get media attention? Get a media personality like a news anchor or a weather forecaster to serve as your MC. And there you go. You've suddenly got greater visibility, and you'll likely be on the local evening news. Another idea is for National Volunteer Month. How about hosting a volunteer fair? Invite nonprofits, your volunteer stations from your community to participate, and remind the media the importance of volunteers in your community. Ask all participating nonprofits to have a volunteer impact story ready to share with the media. Hey, this just became an event with the media in mind. Another idea is organizing a benefits or charity event for one or several of your volunteer stations through a National Day of Service event. Ask your board or AC to help you on this. Find something that's needed in your community. It could be a library. It could be disaster preparedness kits. It could be food donations for food pantries. It could be socks, gloves, beanies for those who are unhoused. Once again, you're creating opportunities to work with the media. The next bullet is awards. Don't be shy about asking partner organizations to nominate you or your program for an award, or how about nominating a volunteer for a local, statewide, or national award? Journalists often cover these when it's prestigious. You can also work with your city or county to sponsor an award ceremony or via a resolution during a council or commissioners meeting. How about social media? Don't overlook working with social media. It can be the most powerful way of spreading your message. That's worth repeating. It can be the most powerful way of spreading your message. Make announcements on social media platforms, invite friends, create a YouTube channel, and send the media links to your press contacts. Your program's social media channels are the perfect places to share timely updates and gain media attention. Remember, you are the one who controls what you want to say on the topic, and each post you make is a chance to drive others to a story. With that in mind, keep posting about it. Plan multiple posts spread over the course of a week and at different times of the day. Give each post a unique message and an angle, such as thanking the news outlet and or journalists for highlighting a volunteer's impact or an important community issue, or acknowledging and tagging any partners, donors, volunteers, or others who participated in the story or gave an interview, or sharing a quote or text that will resonate with your audience, or adding a call to action that's relevant to the story, from sharing the link with others to signing a pledge. There are so many ways to work with media, but know this, you can also create your own media. Plus, you don't have to do this alone. Use your AC, use your board, use your professional network, use volunteers. Just take a step, and I think you'll soon have the media coming to you. And the last slide is just my contact information. Jan, thank you for asking me to be part of this panel, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much, Fred. My name is Ashley, and I'm going to be facilitating the Q&A portion of our webinar today. So thank you to everyone who submitted questions in advance and during the webinar. And just a reminder, if you have any other questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A box in your Zoom taskbar. So we will start with the first question that we have from Sandy. Can you suggest ways to create a message about recruiting that lets potential seniors know there is an income qualification? Most of the responses I receive are from people who are over income. So I'll toss that to Rebecca, Fred, or Jen.
Okay, as far as we are concerned, all of our marketing materials, we always have that first and foremost up front, that we do have an income guideline. If there's anybody that reaches out individually, we address that as well. So all of our presentations, brochures, handouts, flyers, we try to always have certain credentials that are necessary to become a volunteer at the forefront, just so there isn't confusion moving forward.
Thank you. And we did receive a handful of questions before our webinar today. So I'll dive into some of those until we get others. So our first question is, what are some good tips for setting up interviews with multiple parties involved?
I would just say, making it as easy as possible for the reporter. I think helping to coordinate their schedules to get everything lined up for the reporter is very helpful. And talking with them ahead of time about what their perspective is on the story. Again, reporters are looking for multiple resources for a story, usually at least 3 perspectives. And so if you know who those people are and can coordinate with them ahead of time on what their perspective is, so it's clear to everyone, that makes a successful interview.
Great, thanks, Jen. Our next question is, what are some tips for relaxing during interviews? And I know we covered this a little bit in the presentation, but maybe some highlights or best practices for when you're nervous and just trying to relax before an interview.
The tips best for me are just talking with people who inspire me. I'm there for a reason. And when I talk to any one of my volunteers, I'm just moved, and I want to be able to convey that and share that with whomever is interviewing me. And I keep that in mind. I guess the other thing too is, and I talked about it earlier, practice with others, practice with your staff, practice with your advisory council, practice with your family. It's a great way just to get the nerves out of the way. And if you need to, just go in front of the mirror and practice there too.
And I would just add, remove distractions. So many people may have heard my new puppy earlier as during the presentation. So he did have many treats, but decided he needed me during that time. So, I would definitely recommend removing distractions, but obviously couldn't do that with him today.
Thank you, Fred and Jen. All right, another great question from Derek. Locally, our issue is the revolving door of reporters. We create a great relationship, and soon after they leave for a larger market or even just a different job. Given this high turnover in their industry, how would you recommend that we build relationships or pivot on this? It's a great question.
I would just like to add with this is that if you have a really good relationship with the previous reporter, that they also share anyone else on the news team that they would highly suggest, and then hopefully they would then respect your relationship with each other, no matter where they're going, that they would also want your information, but also share with, maybe if they are aware of the person that is filling their shoes. But a lot of times this is always public information as far as who's filling what position, and just expanding your relationship base within that station or newspaper or whatever you are reaching out to. So it's just not, as they would say, putting all your eggs in one basket. So no more than one reporter on that news team.
And also, don't be afraid to reach out to the general manager. I've had them involved on my advisory councils in the past, and it's a great way to ensure that whenever there is turnover, that you'll get in touch with the right person.
Great, and then a follow-up question from Beth. What about a small newspaper that just does not cover local news? I've not been able to get anything in the newspaper for 3 years.
In that case, I would really suggest asking the editor out for a cup of coffee, asking them what are they interested in, what kind of stories would they be interested in from your program, and having that dialogue can just make a huge difference. A very casual cup of coffee.
Great. Another question that we received over email before the event, what are some tips for getting your message across without oversharing?
So I mentioned it earlier. It's really important that you craft a story that's going to be compelling. And I talked earlier about making sure that you land the plane. Yeah, always needs to be succinct. So make sure that you follow the template that I think Jennifer provided earlier, and just review it with others. That would be my advice.
Those are all of the questions we've received today. Any
Actually,
final
can I
questions?
jump in before we go off and
Absolutely.
wrap up? I don't know what happened with this question. I saw it earlier. It was a question about acronyms and the use of RSVP. RSVP is the official name of the program now. So yes, that is an acronym that you can use because that is now the name of the program. And for those that want to know the history of that change, happy to share it at another time. But I did want to let you know that please use that. We don't use retired and senior volunteer program anymore. So just wanted to jump in and say that, and to thank you all for this today. It was great.
Great. It looks like we just got one more question, and this will be the final question for today. But from Jean, a lot of responses assume that there are multiple reporters and editors working at local newspapers. How do we engage a reporter who's covering 3 counties without the support of an editor? How do we get our news into the paper when the reporter has no time for us?
I'll just say kind of fall back on the be relevant, be that person that creates that news story about maybe things that are happening currently and piggybacking. I want to stress that a lot because if it's a newsworthy or news interest, they're going to want to have different opinions and opportunities to share information out there. So that would be one of the suggestions that I would say.
And I would just add too, in that instance, sometimes reporters will take contributed content. So if you write a small story and send a photo, sometimes they will be able to run it because again, they just can't be in so many places anymore. So maybe try offering to do that.
Thanks, everyone. And Atalia, I'll turn it back over to you for any closing remarks.
Thank you. I just want to thank all of our panelists, all of our trainers, Rebecca and for coming and sharing all that you have learned from your experiences. Fred, thank you for encouraging everyone to be strategic in their thinking. I want to appreciate Jennifer for leading this. And it was just a great mix of tips, strategies, and that practical application. So I look forward to seeing what all of our directors who are here today do and how they build out their own media plans. And please keep us posted on that so that we can celebrate with you in the things that you accomplish moving forward. So thank everyone. Thank you for the day.